Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Therapist Connect podcast. My name is Dr. Peter Blundell, and today we have a very, very special episode where I'm interviewing Caz Binstead, the fellow co-lead at the Therapist Connect community, about her years of work as a specialist in private practice. So we talk about her writings, courses, and her work with both students and those new to the sector, her development and input into the BACP Private Practice toolkit, her community work, and the release of her book, Relational Ethics in Psychotherapy and Counselling, Private Practice, Solidarity, Compassion and Justice, published by Routledge. So I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did recording it. If you'd like to order a copy of Caz's book, then you can find the link to that in the show notes. So hello, everybody, and welcome to a Therapist Connect broadcast. My name's Peter Blundell, and we're going to be releasing this, I think, on our YouTube account and also on our podcast platform. So some of you will be able to see me and our guest, and some of you won't. So this is a special author special with the Therapist Connect co-lead Caz Binstead. Caz, hello.
Hello, it's really good to be here. And we were just saying slightly different dynamic in that you're interviewing me today. So I feel a little bit nervous, a little bit unusual for me to feel nervous, but this means a lot. It's so nice to be here talking to our community.
Well, I think it's a really important moment, I think, because if people don't know, Caz has got a book out, which is around private practice. So we wanted to do this interview to kind of explore her specialism around private practice and talk a little bit about the book as well. So we're going to come on to all of that as part of this interview process. And as Caz says, Caz is normally one of the hosts of the podcast. So you were our one of the first guests on the podcast early on. So we have done this interview style before, but about 5 years ago, I think. This is flashback. Okay, so we're going to start off. So we're going to talk about private practice, and that's one of your specialisms, your area of interest. So to kind of lead us into that discussion, can you tell our viewers or listeners what led you into private practice as a therapist in the first place?
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because I never wanted to go into private practice. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It's just that I didn't think about it. It wouldn't be, I think, as a person, like it wouldn't be a natural place for me to go to think about working in the private sector. I kind of finished my training and I got a lot of experience actually in placements and things like that. And I was working with adults and teenagers. And what I actually wanted to do was work in a school or a college or a university, maybe as a therapist. So I started applying for things. And I remember I did get an interview quite quickly, actually, in a secondary school, and I kind of had the interview, and it was all going really, really well. They were very kind of like, "Oh, you really fit the post," and stuff like this. And then we got onto the accreditation question, and they said, "Well, we think that you'd be really good, but you're not accredited." And I said, "Well, I know that's because I'm not far off qualifying, but I actually had around 450 hours because I had a lot of clinical hours." And so I said, "You'll see my hours. It's not going to take me long to do. Literally, I'm very happy to just do that process as quickly as I can." And the reply was kind of, "Well, yeah, but it's not a quick process." And, that was it, and I just thought it was at that moment that I realised, "Oh, okay, this is gonna be a problem." I couldn't afford to not work, it just so happened that concurrently I had 3 clients that I'd taken into a kind of a low cost private practice, and how that had come about was that the placement that I was in, they ran the NHS services here in Lambeth, and they had a low cost service, which allowed people who, like clients who liked their NHS therapists, to move into the low cost service if they wanted to. So that was quite good because it let them, stay with a therapist if they were really, getting on with that therapist and wanted to continue. So that had kind of happened, and then the placement allowed you to then take those low cost therapists into your own private practice. So I'd kind of done that as just a way of kind of continuing to work. And I thought, well, okay, well, I've got 3 clients and, that's not gonna be enough. So if I can't get a job now, I'm gonna have to try and, build this private practice. So it was all kind of just it wasn't planned. And I do maintain that actually, to this day, and some people will see this in the book, psychology is a big part of, how successful you are in private practice. I do believe that your mindset, and I was really in a place where I wasn't kind of one of those people that was like, I'm desperate to have a private practice. So I was kind of just a bit like, I've just got to kind of find a way to make it work. And yeah, and I did. And as you know, Peter, I'm not the most kind of the word corporate is one of my like run and hide words. Peter knows this. So I'm not what you would call a kind of classic business person, if you like, but I did also understand that it was a business. So I was able to just learn I just started from scratch. I just learnt it myself. And I did it kind of in the way of who I am as a person. So I didn't try and be someone that I wasn't, but I did learn how to do it all myself. And yeah, very quickly, my practice was full. And yeah, however many years, nearly 50, 13 years. What are we now? Yeah, nearly 13 years in private practice. It's just been constantly full. And there's never not been a time when, I've dipped below what I've wanted to work or whatever. I've always, been able to maintain that practice.
That's really interesting. And I'm thinking about the two different things there, like the barriers to employment,
Mhm.
the first one, and then also like a window open into private practice, which gave you like a bit of a taste of it, if you like, where of how this could work. And then the rest of it, you just had to kind of learn yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, so that's it. I find it interesting that you weren't necessarily wanting to go into private practice, and yet it has become like one of your specialisms in terms of understanding it and your knowledge around all of that. So how did you go from kind of, okay, yeah, you've set up in private practice, to now it becoming such an area of kind of interest and specialism?
Yeah, I think, I was just very happy kind of working away. I absolutely love this work. I still do. I get slightly more tired these days, having done it for a long time, but I still love the work. But so I'm just very happy, like working away. And my supervisor kind of said to me, you really got something here. And she was very encouraging in saying that, there was certain, I guess, skills that I had that other people didn't have. And I began to look around and I just began to see that people were really struggling with their private practices. And I thought, well, okay, I kind of put the two together and thought, well, there must be something in that, I guess. And this was years and years ago. When there wasn't really private practice consultants, there wasn't that many courses out there either. So I set up a course which is called New to Private Practice and was running it in one of the training institutes here in London. And that was, every intake, it was kind of, full, very busy, people with, really that course could have been, I think it was started on one day, went to 2 days, but it really could have been, a great big huge course actually, because people were just it was really like, you know me, Peter, I try and, get as much in as I can, so I was, like, trying to cram as much information in as possible, but, yeah, people kind of would have wanted more. There was a lot that was coming up, and actually, like, an accountant came along for some of those sessions that were run, to come and talk about that side of things. So it was interesting for me to see just how much people really wanted help in this area.
I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I see it with students, like someone starts off a kind of conversation about private practice. It's like one question, and then it kind of mushrooms into kind of all these other questions. And I think that's something we'll probably talk about. Is there's actually so much to private practice that I can understand why, start to do some training on it, and all of a sudden you're like trying to cram all this knowledge in, but actually it needed more space and time to kind of unpack all of that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really interesting. That's like kind of like the what leads you into kind of delivering training and kind of delving into this topic in more detail and sharing that knowledge. But then that's then expanded even further in terms of kind of the work you've done around private practice within the profession within the UK, especially with the BACP, where I know that you have developed and designed and led on the private practice toolkit, which is amazes me actually that has taken so long for BACP to come up with something like that. But you were kind of one of the main people leading on that and creating the resources. So how did that come about, given that you've said that you're kind of not a corporate person and
Yes.
kind of then working within BACP,
Yeah.
creating these kind of resources for all the practitioners who are members?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess if I think about who I am as a person, I'm creative, and I felt that I'd done a lot of kind of creative things, and I was and I am very good at creative thinking. So this was something that I kind of thought, okay, well, I have got something to offer here, because I noticed in trainings and stuff that I would be saying things that other people hadn't really thought about. So, I thought, okay, there's something there. Secondly, I'm an incredibly detailed person, which I'm very, very detailed. So, in terms of things like contracting and all of that jazz. Yeah, I kind of recognized that was real skill of mine, actually. And then I guess the third thing was just about my own movements within the profession. Like I say, for years I'd been very happy just quietly working in my consulting room, just doing the work basically. But things began to change a little bit for me, and I suppose I became frustrated with the BACP. You know, I think they were doing these things. They brought in this thing which was like a secret shopper thing, where they were going to send, people masquerading as clients, around private practices and contacting private practitioners. And I mean, that just went down like an absolute lead balloon, as you can imagine. And that was one of the first real complaints that I'd had. I mean, I'd seen things over the years, people being unhappy, but that was one of the first real complaints that I had. So I guess I was becoming more interested um, in what was going on in our profession. And I suppose that led me to think, well, what does the BACP actually do for private practitioners? Because that feels like like a not very supportive and useful thing to be, putting on private practitioners. And I guess I just kind of thought, well, I can see we talked about the barriers, and it had become a real important thing for me to think about in terms of that accreditation. And I'd noticed that there was work going on around unpaid work. And so I had, as a protest, not got accredited myself so that I could stand in solidarity with those other people to try and, force systems to change in our profession. And so, yeah, I just kind of thought, well, yeah, that's the largest membership body and what's being done for private practitioners. And, I guess I'm a kind of see a problem, get in there and try and sort it out kind of person. So I just saw an advert for a volunteer position on the private practice divisional executive, and I thought, okay, well, I might as well go for it. And in my interview, I kind of began to talk about, my ideas in terms of the things that the organisation could do. And got offered the position. And very quickly, actually, it was like only like a few months later, because it was in one of the very first meetings that we had where I kind of said, I want to continue to talk about what I was saying in my interview. And basically, I just don't feel like there's enough support for private practitioners, that that they don't get any support really. We don't feel the presence of the membership bodies. And when we do feel the presence of the membership bodies, it's kind of being a bit scared, to be honest. And that is a real, that's a real, I felt quite scared after qualify. You'd hear all these things in training, and then you'd just be petrified, petrified of having a complaint, petrified of doing something wrong. And that was a real thing. So when I got that position, I thought, okay, well, you've got a little bit of power here to actually do something for good. For good for the profession. So I was asked to put together a business case, a business plan, which I did. I was kind of like, wow, okay, right. So I spent a bit of time on that, put this business plan together for something akin to the toolkit, and then it just kind of flew off from there. And there was another very enthusiastic BACP staff member there, who I think maybe it was good luck that he started at BACP the same time that I was doing this, because what it meant was that I could really lead as the divisional lead on that project. I could really lead from the therapy side of things, and like being able to, because we kind of, in addition to new resources, we went through the website and the magazines to try and pull in articles and things that were useful. But I read through the entire toolkit because obviously someone had to say, these are relevant, these are not relevant, this is correct, this is not correct, and all of that kind of thing. So, in addition to doing quite a lot of writing and quite a lot of contribution to the toolkit, I was kind of doing that side of things. And then Adam Pollard, who was was a product manager or something, I can't remember his exact title at that point. He was doing kind of all the getting it up and the marketing and all of that kind of thing. So yeah.
I mean, it's such a huge amount of work's gone into that, and I think one of the things I find really interesting is there's a lot of members of whatever membership body where they kind of, you see a lot of people saying, well, I pay this fee, what am I actually getting for my money? And for me, I think the private practice toolkit is such a huge resource for members. And I know, I think, like, is it 80 or 90% of it is free resources? I think there's some that maybe members have to pay for, but majority of it is free for members. And so I really think it does add some real value to people's fee when they're actually saying, well, what do I get? And it's a huge amount of resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I want to say this now. I really hope the BACP pick that toolkit up and do something with it, because since I've left, nothing's happened. I really, really hope they do, because the whole point of it is, to be an ongoing thing that is there to help private practitioners. And you're right, we had a lot, but I haven't been involved with BACP since 2022, and we're getting into 2025. So I hope that they can really. Now it's been set up, it's kind of all the hard work's done, and I hope that they can, yeah, run with that a little bit. But for me, it's just it's a nice legacy. And it obviously gave me a lot of opportunity to think about things and to think about where private practice was, and particularly my specialist area, specifically, which is the kind of thinking about ethical private practice and the therapy side, and being ethical and working ethically with the business side, and growing your practice. So thinking about both those things and how they sit together.
And I think that probably brings us nicely to kind of how you've brought those things together, which is in your well, I say new book. It will have been out for probably a couple of months actually by the time we kind of release this. So, Relational Ethics in Psychotherapy and Counselling, Private Practice, Solidarity, Compassion, Justice. And it's yourself, a lead author, and then Nicholas Sarantakis. Is that
Sarantakis, yeah.
Sarantakis, I pronounced that correctly? Which is part of a series by Routledge, Ethics in Action. So, and I suppose I kind of know the answer to this, but what kind of led you to write the book then? I think your journey so far kind of indicates why, but what's your way of explaining that, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I suppose I would have been writing something at some point. I did, yeah. I mean, the toolkit work was a lot of hard work. So, and obviously, you and I doing Therapists Connect, and on the back of the pandemic, I was kind of really exhausted for a while, and so I was thinking about, well, I was definitely going to write a book, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? And how's that going to look? Who am I going to go with, and all of that kind of thing. And then I was approached by Andrew Reeves, Professor Andrew Reeves, and Professor Lynn Gabriel. And Lynn Gabriel was very, very complimentary towards me, and kind of had basically said that she'd been, uh, following the work that I'd done, and that, that they were thinking of this project, and that they thought that I would be really good as the lead author. And they basically told me, and I thought, well, that's almost exactly what I've been doing. And so, yeah, so it just made sense. But I guess for me to kind of take that on. And obviously, to be part of the Ethics in Action series and to be published by Routledge, it felt like a really good place to kind of be putting this work. And yeah, and then Nicholas kind of came along a few months later. I think one of those two knew him, so he was put on the project. So we didn't know each other. So which is obviously a challenge if you're writing a book with and both people don't know each other. But I think his area was more ethics, ethics in general, and obviously my area was private practice, and I guess all of it. So yeah.
It's great. Do you, I'm wondering about the title "Solidarity, Compassion, and Justice," and why you felt it was important to include those things in the title.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the reasons I hope people get to read the book, and I hope they're not put off, by the way, by the subtitle, because I know the word solidarity, and some people can send kind of alarm bells, like, left wing unionist or something. But actually, if you look the word solidarity up in the dictionary, it has a very, very specific meaning, and it is very much about camaraderie. And I suppose all of my work with community, it really fits for me. And it actually has, I suppose, more than one meaning, the subtitle, because, um, yeah, it looks at the book looks at, so it looks at the realities of private practice and the realities of being a private practitioner. So it takes into consideration the work itself, obviously. The book is absolutely jam packed with vignettes and all kinds of, I guess, kind of interesting ones. Like I tried to make them like not common kind of ones. Some of them, I guess, are, but some of them are, ones that people may not have thought about before. And so I guess words like justice and compassion you're going to find in the ethical frameworks, but also solidarity when we think about social awareness. We kind of we talk in the book about being socially aware towards clients. So I guess some people would call this social justice or whatever, but it's quite broad actually when you look at it. How you can be socially aware, and that includes private practitioners as well. Because I think a lot of the work that I had done was looking at the potential like rubs tension between, say, a private practitioner and um, the lack of support they had and what needs they may bring into business, and then how you work ethically and make sure you're continually, as best as possible, working ethically with clients. So obviously, like the area of money, for example, might be one where there could be a bit of a tension. Yeah, so I'd had these kinds of two dimensions, but in the book we add a third dimension, which is the social context. Yeah, so the subtitle is, yes, for client work, but it's also about, say, the community of private practitioners. So solidarity, do we actually support each other as private practitioners, or are we going into kind of being islands and looking at things from a competitive point of view? How are we with private practitioners on social media, other private practitioners, and how does that all feed into, I guess thinking about how, ethically speaking, we can be the best that we can be, both as a community of private practitioners and in our individual work as private practitioners, and also how can the profession support that? Because I do feel like, as I've obviously already said, I do feel very much like private practitioners or working therapists actually are quite unseen in our profession, which is kind of ironic given working therapists are the ones out there doing the work. I do think there's, I guess that fits in with what I would see as difficulties with around equality and certain hierarchies in our profession. So, yeah, the book really tries to look at things from all of those levels. And that's why I hope people will read it, because I think it gives some interesting ideas. You might not agree, but I think it gives some interesting ideas to think about.
I love that, and I think the book does cover so many different angles. So I think there'll be something new for anybody who reads it, actually. And I was thinking about what you were saying then. I always get this percentage wrong, so I won't say the percentage, but a huge amount of members of BACP and other membership bodies are in private practice as well. But it's not always at the forefront of the discussions and arguments around therapy that are happening. So I agree. I do think that those practitioners are missed quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, almost 70% work in private practice in some capacity, and that's going to keep going up. And, I guess I have a question mark because I do believe, obviously, because of what I do, that you can make a living from private practice. But the profession is also becoming very, very congested because, I mean, as a lecturer, you will know there are a lot of trainees, out there. And, some courses more than others can get quite full. So I really think that, yeah, that it's important that we're kind of looking at this area and we're making sure that everybody's getting supported as much as they can be.
Mm. So I mean, it might be very difficult to pick one chapter, but have you got any particular chapters in here which you'd say is your favorite, or the one you
Oh.
enjoyed writing most? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it is really, really difficult. Um, I've always loved writing for students. There's a chapter specifically for students on there, and that's been historically what I've loved writing on, because obviously a lot of my work, I do work for, I mean, and the book is, by the way, for, uh, you know, um, private experienced private practitioners as well, because there's kind of ideas about what it's like to run a 21st century private practice, particularly, after the pandemic period as well, like where we're at with that. So the book is for um, those people as well. But I suppose a lot of my work has been for students and new private practitioners. And I've actually hosted two BACP student conferences as well as delivering workshops. So and I've done other trainings and things. So I of course I love that chapter. But I also love the contracting chapter. It's the biggest chapter, and there's still more to say. But I really I kind of I'd thought about it a lot because I'd done this, co-written this contract template for BACP, which had been a real thing in itself because for so long they hadn't had a template there. So I'd done a lot of thinking on that already, but it was so really very, very good to just sit there and really think about the contract. I really enjoyed that actually when I wrote this chapter. Um, Social media, it won't surprise you, and it was obviously great to, I suppose that chapter is very community as well. I've been able to talk about Therapists Connect. I've been able to look at some of the very, very minimal research on therapists using social media. But, most importantly, there's this round table and also a kind of a discussion with a private practitioner. So it's just great to have private practitioners actually involved in that. I am just going to say Therapist Connect was the first platform ever to do a conversation with a conversation on social media with therapists in general. So this was one with private practitioners, but I just wanted to say that because I would really urge people to check that out on YouTube if you enjoy reading this roundtable, because I think that therapists themselves, because this is such a there's a lot to look at and a lot to think about. I really think that therapists themselves have a lot to offer in terms of where we're at with using social media, how we use it, why we use it, all of that kind of thing.
And I think the pace is moving so quickly with social media. It's evolving, it's changing. New platforms are coming, others are disappearing, and so I almost feel like you could hold that discussion every 6 months with different practitioners and get different discussion points coming out of it because of how quick paced it is and how much it keeps moving.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One thing I will say is I'll use this space to just say this. Um, we were quite interested in the points that we had in common and the points that we, disagreed on or whatever. But one area was around confidentiality on social media, and absolutely all the private practitioners there agreed that confidentiality should be kept on social media, and that would be like a number one ethical point. And yet, every single person had seen confidentiality broken on social media. So I just wanted to, just wanted to mention that. Remember when you're on social media, confidentiality is very, very important.
And I also I think maybe there's probably nuanced conversations to have around that because maybe people think that they are being confidential when they're not. Do you know what I mean? So that I think there's I think people really need to explore that in terms of how they express themselves on social media and what it is they're actually saying.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
I'll just mention some other chapters as well. I loved writing the endings chapter. Again, there could be much more to say on that, but it's an important chapter for private practitioners. Um, there is a chapter on social awareness in itself, and that has a lot of stuff around money, but it also has a lot of stuff around working with diversity and difference. And obviously, this is a massive area of interest for me. So I love that one. And the other chapter that I love is the supervision chapter, or supervision and other supportive spaces. And I really loved writing that chapter because I was able to bring in some other work that I'd done around, a supervision model that I'd come up with. So I was able to reference that and talk a little bit about that. And hopefully, this book is going to be really helpful for supervisors working with private practitioners as well as private practitioners themselves. And yeah, I do talk about kind of specialist private practice supervision. It's something I kind of have come up with myself, actually. So it was nice to get all those ideas down in one place, but also just really just loved writing about therapy as well, So yeah, so lots of interesting things in there that I enjoyed, and it's just nice to see it, yeah, in a book.
I mean, and I'm glad that you've covered all those because the book is absolutely packed full of stuff. There is so much in here for everyone. So no, I think it's a wonderful achievement and a nice way to kind of bring all of that knowledge and experience together in the one place, you know. So I'm wondering, I suppose, what is next in terms of private practice? You still have your own private practice, obviously.
Right. Yes, well, you say obviously, but many people don't know that I do, because I'm so busy. And sometimes I was actually speaking to Jane Travis, who's another private practice consultant, and she was like, "What? You still got a full private practice?" Because a lot of people, are doing all this work. They don't still have a full private practice, but I do, and it is a full private practice. So, actually, yeah, that is, I suppose I'm doing a lot of extra things, but that is my main job, and that is what I'm continuing to do for now. And then, yeah, I'm gonna see what the new year brings. It's been a funny old time the last few years. You and I have worked incredibly hard as well, on community stuff. And activism, in our own activist things that we've that we've been a part of. And I do feel like, yeah, you said bringing everything together. So I feel like it's a culmination. It almost feels like there's a little pause for me now. There's a little pause to kind of go, right, where am I at now? What is it I actually really want to do? That will certainly include writing. Without a doubt, I'm going to continue to write. But um, yeah, there's I guess there's lots of things you can do, but you kind of have to decide what are the main things for me and what's most important for me. And yeah, I'm sure I'll keep you updated. You'll probably know before other people, but
Well, it sounds like it's a watch this space, and it also sounds like you've not 100% figured that out yourself yet in terms of what's next, and that you're going to spend some time thinking about that.
yeah, definitely. I mean, John from Online Events has, I've talked to him about all kinds of private practice workshops that I can do there with online events. So, watch that as well, because there may be some things that come out at some point. Yeah, but yeah, very much. I'm really enjoying. I've got 3 weeks off over Christmas, and I'm just gonna everything's gonna stop, and I'm just gonna really enjoy my time and also use that as a time to just be a little bit in my head, so I'm not we were just talking there, we're not gonna do any work. It's like a pact. We're not gonna do any work over Christmas. But I do want to just be able to just sit and just think and be with myself and just go, yeah, what's important for me and what have I got to offer, that's gonna be, yeah, best for me, like I'm gonna enjoy, and also that's, gonna be something that's hopefully something else that's gonna be useful for people.
Love it. Well, I think that brings us to a nice close. We're talking about having a rest, and after all of that work, not just your book, but everything else that you've done for the wider profession and private practitioners. I think you deserve a rest for that. So, thank you for all of the work that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
All right, take care.